sorry to be back with even more bad news, but there was a really terrible bill that passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee last week. It's called the Earn It Act, and I want to go over it with you guys because I don't think it's getting that much attention yet. But I started reading up on it last week, and I became really concerned about what's going on. I wrote an article at basedpolitics.com if you want to read that. But I want to talk about it here, too, because I know some people like to listen versus read. And I think that this bill has some really serious implications. What you need to know is it's not totally new. This bill has been lurking in the corners of Congress since 2020, and a lot of free market advocates and civil libertarians were raising concerns all the way back then. I'll be honest, I'm still kind of new to the tech, antitrust beat. I've really just gotten more interested in it in the past couple of years. So now that I'm getting up to speed. But basically, in this bill, the government wants private companies to assist them, meaning law enforcement, basically to, as they say, combat child abuse. So everybody wants to stop child abuse, but frankly, enlisting the private sector in any of these endeavors is always problematic on its face because no company should be forced to help the law enforcement or the government do its job. We pay more than enough tax dollars for them to be doing that job, and there's obvious free market violations right out the gate. But I will say that it seems many of the supporters of this bill are well-intentioned. I think they want to keep kids safe from abuse, as do we all. But as is so often the case when it comes to politics, big government policies that are undertaken in the name of safety, specifically child safety, often fail to improve anything in that situation and make everything else worse in the process by violating very essential liberties. And that's what this bill does. Basically, it says that the government can strip online companies of their Section 230 liability protections unless they provide law enforcement with third-party content. So that's yikes on multiple fronts. It obviously violates free speech, it violates the Fourth Amendment, it violates due process, and I kind of want to quickly break that down. Quick refresher, Section 230 is this often debated piece of internet law that's kind of obscure, but that I've done a ton of work on and that I'm very passionate about trying to help people understand better and work through the confusion around it. Basically, Section 230 just ensures that the First Amendment is applied to the internet. It simply says companies are not liable for what you may write on their platforms. Instead, you, the individual, are responsible for what you say. That's just common sense. For anybody who believes in individual liberty, that's how things should be structured. Even without Section 230, the courts would still likely find this to be true most of the time because we have the First Amendment. The problem is that without Section 230, companies would have to spend a lot of money defending themselves in frivolous lawsuits because our court system is junk and doesn't have a system where the loser pays, as it should, but it doesn't. So this would put a lot of small competitors out of business because they wouldn't have the money to defend themselves even if they were in the right. And it likely would actually incentivize companies to censor people more so that they would avoid the cost of defending themselves in frivolous lawsuits. But basically, this bill would make the First Amendment conditional. It would say that if you don't give us the kind of information that we're looking for, if you don't cooperate with law enforcement to basically seize people's property without a warrant, then we will take away your Section 230 protections and you'll lose this liability protection. So I think that that's a really serious, egregious violation of free speech, highly problematic. Secondly, police are supposed to have a warrant before they can search for things. This is just basic constitutional law. To go around that by forcing private companies to do their dirty work and investigation for them, the government is violating the Fourth Amendment's privacy protections, and it's also violating the Fifth Amendment's due process protections, which is just seriously really ghastly and a shameless usurpation of our Constitution. But it gets even worse, because in doing all of this, you see these people, and both Democrats and Republicans are in a, this is another bad bill by Klobuchar, but it has Republicans on it too. These people are so mad at big tech. They're looking for any way to go after them. They're saying it's to protect children. I think some people who are supporting this are genuine, but I think a lot of them are just saying that because they want to go after big tech and they know that's a sympathetic argument. But they're so mad at big tech, they're going after every avenue to go after them in such a way that they've actually written a bill so bad that it not only subverts basic civil liberties, it actually would hurt prosecutions against sexual predators. That's how bad it is. It actually would end up hurting the very people that it claims to be working to protect. And here's how. While Congress may have zero respect for our Bill of Rights, fortunately, some in our court system still do. And there's pretty good legal precedent for throwing out any evidence in a case that has been collected through third parties without a warrant, which is exactly what Congress is seeking to do with this legislation. So that means that victims of child abuse or other abuse victims of like sexual abuse on the internet could see a situation where they have this case, there's evidence collected against the abuser online, but it actually gets thrown out because the government used this shady method of collecting it versus getting a warrant and going through the proper channels. And so we actually could see this undermine the very victims they claim to be helping. So it passed out of its Senate Judiciary Committee. That means it's onto the full Senate floor, and people need to be really upset about this.